I've never felt like I belonged. I felt like I was overlooked, forgotten. I was told lies, and I wore the labels. And then I tried to be the perfect little girl. Because perfect little girls are seen, they're known, they're loved. But it didn't work. When I was little, there was one place that I knew I belonged, and that was with my daddy. It was my favorite place to be. People knew who I was because I looked just like him. We have similar personalities, similar sense of humors. He loved to have a good time, to laugh, to make jokes. He introduced me to sports. He taught me how to coach and how to teach. He taught me how to love others, value them, and see the best in them. He was my hero. But Tuesday, May 10th, 1994, started out like any other day. It was any other night in my family. We were up at the ball field for practices and games. My dad coached my sister's team. When the game was over, he hurried us to the car, and it was really weird. It wasn't what he normally did. Normally, we're the last ones at the field. And when he got in the car, he asked my mom to take him to the emergency room. I didn't really know what was going on. I was really confused. But I knew that he couldn't get comfortable sitting in the front seat. When my mom pulled up to the emergency room, she asked me to get out with him. And I walked into the emergency room with my dad. They quickly took him behind the swinging doors, and he never walked out. That night, he died of a massive heart attack. My dad, my hero, the place I felt I belonged, he was gone. 3 days later, we celebrated his life with friends and family and all those that he had influenced. And at 15, I buried my dad. My world came crashing down. I was lost. I felt paralyzed, numb, going through the motions, just trying to exist. That's how I spent the remainder of my high school years. I still wanted to belong, so I became the yes girl. You asked me to do something, and I was going to do it, because then I would belong. They would love me. I would have a place. But again, it never worked. And so at the end of high school, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to find a place to belong. I went out seeking for love, and I ran. But every time I left my home in Florida, I came back because I lost another family member. And I thought, this time, if I go back and I help my family, they'll love me. I'll feel this sense of belonging. But it didn't happen. You see, when my dad passed away, everything changed in my life. Holidays were never the same. The joy was gone. Eventually, the memory of him faded. All the pictures, they came down off the wall. We stopped talking about him. We stopped sharing stories of who he was. I didn't like holidays anymore. I didn't want to be around them, my family, because it was just too painful. So when I started to run and I came back and it still didn't feel like I fit, I got my dream job. And I said, this is it. I'm going to teach. I'm going to coach. This is the job for me. But I was miserable. And so in 2013, depressed, alone, isolated, still searching for that connection, that belonging, but yet wanting my life to end every single day. People had no idea that when I would drive on the interstate, I would think about running my car into those cement barriers. They didn't know that I prayed and asked God to just take me, because if this is living, I don't want to keep doing it. I can't keep doing it. And so in 2013, I lost what I thought was my dream job. And again, I did what I knew to do, and that was run. But this time I knew the pain was going to come with me, so I thought I'll just go further. So this time I ran all the way across the country and landed in Las Vegas. And when you're in the car for 5 days by yourself and your stuff, it can get really quiet. And see, I grew up in Christian school, and I grew up going to church. And so when I lost my dad, I knew the verses. I knew that Jesus loved me. I knew that they said he would never leave me. I knew that they said that he had a plan and purpose for my life, and that he would take all of this and make it into good. And I used those verses to answer people's questions. And yet they were just empty words. Well, when I got in that car and I drove 5 days across the country to Las Vegas, God began to whisper those truths into my life. He said, "Joslin, I love you." And I said, "No, you don't know what I've done. You can't love me." He said, "Joslin, you're my daughter." "No, I definitely don't deserve that." He said, "Joslin, I accept you." "No." And every single truth that he whispered into me, I said no to. You see, I didn't realize at that point that it wasn't my voice, but that I was listening to the voice of shame. And so after my year in Las Vegas, I moved to North Carolina. Because see, in 2013, when I lost my job, this is where I was supposed to come. But I went to Las Vegas, kind of like Jonah. I call it my Jonah year now. And so when I moved back to North Carolina, I knew that I needed to find a church. And so I started Googling and came across Mosaic. I watched a couple sermons online, and then I thought, well, I'll go check this place out. And so I came and I checked it out, but I would come late so I didn't have to talk to anybody. And then I would leave as soon as it was over, and hopefully no one saw me. You see, I wanted to be known and seen. I wanted to belong, but I felt like I was such a mess that I couldn't belong. And then I got introduced to icuTalks, and I sat on the 4th row, the 3rd chair, for 12 months, except for 1 month that I got brave and I sat up here. But I cried every single time I heard somebody's story. Because I said, "God, that's what I want for my life, but why is it not happening?" You see, I was still listening to the voice of the enemy. I was still listening to the shame. And I thought I was unworthy of God to change my life. But as I listened to those stories, I learned that this community here at icuTalks and my community at Mosaic, it was totally different. I learned what the voice of shame was. I learned that it wasn't my voice. I learned that no was a complete answer and required no explanation. And I remember the first time that I said no, I thought my whole world was going to fall apart. I really had a physical reaction to it, but I did it. And what I learned was that when I said no and created boundaries in my life, it actually helped me to have more connection. Not only with the people in my community, but with my family. And that was the hardest place to say no. But because I've said no, I now can go around them in the holidays. It's still not pretty. It's actually really messy. But I know how to take care of myself. I know how to listen to the voice of truth. Because the voice of shame, it's still there. It still tells me I'm unworthy, I don't belong, you're not loved. But I get to look into the face of God and know that I am loved and I'm chosen, that he has redeemed me. And because of that, when the voices start, it tells me I'm still in the fight. And I don't have to listen to him anymore. And it gives me the strength, because of who I am in Christ, to stand up and continue to fight. Thank you.